What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today I've got a review of the new 2018 iPad Pro, and there's definitely been a lot of talk about this for various reasons, many of which being very good, and others kind of talking about whether or not Apple did enough on the software side to make use of the power and make it a worthy laptop replacement. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of different people considering this tablet, and for very good reason. It is simply the best tablet on the market when it comes to hardware, and even though it does come at a cost, there's just no question about that if you're looking for the best tablet out there, the iPad's going to be the one. Whether you're an artist looking for something to create on, or if you're a photographer that wants a mobile editing machine, even a little bit of video, someone who's in business and finance and wants to manage spreadsheets, and of course in the medical field where the iPad has been a very popular option. You also can't forget students out there, as I was recently just a student, and for a lot of people you're going to be looking for a tablet like the iPad Pro to possibly be your main machine. With the iPad Pro coming in an 11-inch and 13-inch option, the 11-inch has always been the choice that I've gone for because the laptop is obviously a little bit larger, and this is the portable option that they offer. The only thing about my previous generation iPad, as much as I love it though, is that I found that in the past year or so, the only thing I've really used it for is to watch Netflix on planes. I did do some photo editing occasionally when it came to Photoshop Mobile or Visco, and also using the Apple Pencil, and also typing up a few notes here and there, but because of kind of the iOS experience, I felt like it was more of an extension of my smartphone as opposed to my laptop. When it comes to hardware though, this year Apple redesigned the iPad in a lot of ways. It kind of has that squared off edge on the side, which I actually quite like, and on the sides you will find, of course, your volume button as well as a sleep and power on the top. There's also a magnetic dock on the top to charge your Apple Pencil wirelessly, so you don't have to have that thing sticking out from the end. And of course, the biggest change of all is you don't have a home button on the front anymore, and instead it uses Face ID similar to the iPhone X and XS and XS Max, and it works just as well as on the smartphones. And the display just goes beautifully and very symmetrically from side to side without a notch. The screen resolution on the 11-inch iPad is 2388 by 1668, and the 13-inch model has a resolution of 2732 by 2048. Last year's iPad already saw one of the best displays that we'd ever seen on a tablet, and this year is no different. You have P3 wide color gamut as well as a laminated screen, so it literally looks like a sticker on the tablet. But most importantly, one of the biggest things in my opinion is the 120Hz refresh rate, which Apple calls ProMotion, which just looks so smooth for scrolling and is very important, especially with the Apple Pencil. The display itself looks very impressive for whatever you want to do on it, and by going edge to edge, it looks even better this year. The quad speakers sound very good when it comes to multimedia, so here's a quick sound test. Even though all the design changes are very nice, one thing that we saw this year in the tablet that we have been waiting for is USB Type-C. You can also use it to charge things, but I think what it's really going to be important for is for transferring photo, video, or media over to the tablet to work on. On the inside, you're going to find Apple's A12X Bionic chip paired with 4 gigs of RAM on all models, with exception to the 1TB model coming with 6 gigs of RAM. With the 1TB option being offered this year, it's clear that for a lot of people this is going to be your main machine, but it does come in at a very, very high price point as expected. Enough to make you make the tough decision of whether or not you want to get a computer or a tablet with a keyboard and the pencil at the same price, if not even a little bit more in some cases. I think when it comes to hardware, as much as I tried, I just really can't find a major flaw with it. When it comes to software though, this is where we kind of had a lot of questions and debate as to whether or not the iPad is actually a good device, especially at its asking price. Whether you're an Apple fan or not, you have to admit that Apple over the years has really set the bar high for the tablet market and essentially revolutionized it. I think for a while though, the reason why the iPad was a popular option was because of iOS and the software. The fact that the App Store had the iPad apps that were made specifically for the larger screen form factor and took advantage of that. But I think now it's a point where we've kind of wondered where Apple wanted to go with the tablet, whether or not it's supposed to be more of a laptop or a mobile experience. And I think more people were hoping that it would have kind of a macOS experience with a touchscreen in the tablet. The main reason for that is because the hardware that Apple has done to the tablet has reached a point to where I feel like it's kind of outgrowing the software experience and kind of the mobile approach. The A12X processor is more powerful than a lot of laptops. It's got a beautiful screen. It's also got great hardware to support it. You've got a camera on the back. You've also got USB Type-C now. So what I'm really trying to say here is that the iPad is great when it comes to hardware, but I think next year especially, I would really like to see what Apple does with software and the experience that they can bring to take the full advantage of this hardware. That's not to say that there's already a lot of signs that it is going the right direction though. A full version of Photoshop is coming soon, as well as a version of Adobe Premiere for the tablet. Final Cut is something that we've also been waiting for a very long time for the iPad. But an app that I've been using recently, and I'm sure you've seen a ton of video on it, is called LumaFusion, and it really tests out the capability of whether or not the iPad can video edit. TLD had the best video demonstrating the full experience of that, so I'm gonna leave a link to that down below. But this app essentially has a lot of characteristics that you should expect out of a full-fledged video editor and was actually completely usable from what I saw. If you're doing 1080p video editing, this thing was able to handle it very, very well, and the LumaFusion app had all the things that you needed when it came to adding music, doing some color corrections, transitions, and was also able to export in a very reasonable amount of time. As much as I wanted to edit this entire video on that though, unfortunately my file sizes are absolutely massive on the Canon 1DX in 4K, so I wasn't effectively able to run off of the 64 gig iPad Pro here. Some of the other apps that I also really like to use as well is Photoshop Mobile as well as Visco. But of course the support with Microsoft and Word as well as PowerPoint and Excel is great to have on mobile experience, and it's also very nice when paired with a keyboard to take notes and have this on the go. Occasionally I also do a little bit of drawing on the tablet, but I'm not the best at it. So for the most part, I think this year's iPad Pro when it comes to power is enough to do video editing and all the things that you're going to need on any mobile experience. Although the USB Type-C input is very nice, I think one thing that kind of holds it back is Apple's file system, which I'm just not the biggest fan of when it comes to iOS. I think for students out there and for general administrative work and everyday tasks, this is a very, very good option, and I could definitely recommend it as a main machine for a lot of people out there. If you guys take a look at the benchmark scores of this year's iPad though with Apple's A12X Bionic processor, it really raises the question as to what Apple might be working on in even future MacBooks and using their chips. Just to kind of wrap off the software experience, so I'm not really bashing Apple, I just feel like the hardware is capable of so much more than what's currently done on the tablet. But now I want to talk a bit more about the accessories of the iPad Pro, and they are very expensive, but I feel like are a very big part of the full experience. I find that most users of the iPad Pro at least have an external keyboard as well as an Apple Pencil, and some of the changes in the new Apple Pencil is that it is not compatible with the previous generation and vice versa. The price is also a bit higher, and it does also have wireless charging this year that attaches to the side of the iPad. There is also kind of a matte finish to it and a flat side that just has the Apple Pencil on the top, but for the most part it still looks very similar, and there isn't the cap that I found myself losing all the time. And one functional feature that is nice to see is an intuitive touch surface that supports double tapping so you can change tools on the fly. I think some of the uses beyond drawing and taking notes is using Photoshop to do things such as retouching on like product shots and dust and stuff like that, and that's what I found myself using it for the most. With the new iPad, there is also a new keyboard folio case, and there is some improvements this year, but for the most part, the typing experience feels very similar to the one on the last iPad. The buttons are all very spaced out and a pleasure to type on, and you don't have to charge it separately because it connects to the pins on the back of the iPad. We can just remove it right here. And the soft touch material covers the entire back and kind of protects it, and it's easy to just fold it and go. And when it comes to viewing experience, you can rest it in two different angles now right here, and the magnets on the iPad are extremely strong, whether it's for the Apple Pencil or the folio case or the stands when it comes to the position, and that is very nice to see. If you guys are looking for some other accessories though, some of them that I can recommend are a glass screen protector from ESR if you decide to take your tablet on the go without a case. It's a 9H material and has been tested to stand up to 22 pounds of force, and it covers the iPad front very well. If you're looking for a nice budget case and don't need a keyboard though, then ESR also makes a folio case that you can just put your iPad in and take it around as you go while also covering the front. So I'm going to leave a link to that down below, and I'd like to thank them for sponsoring this video. Before I forget though, the iPad Pro also has a pretty good camera. Whether or not you should be using it, that's kind of your problem. But you have a 12 megapixel camera on the back with an f1.8 aperture as well as portrait mode on both the front and the back. The rear facing camera can record up to 4K 60, and on the front you're going to find a 7 megapixel f2.2 camera with, like I mentioned, portrait mode. So at the end of the day, what do I think of the Apple iPad Pro? And as someone who loves the iPad and knows that this is the best tablet on the market and always wants to have the latest and greatest one, I'm also one who didn't really use the iPad before. I just watched Netflix on it, and although it was very good for Netflix and the screen looks amazing and it's a good size, this thing costs over $1,000, and I'm pretty sure most people aren't going to spend that money just to watch Netflix and YouTube. This year, the iPad Pro, as you can see, improved in almost every way when it came to hardware and design, even upon a tablet that was already near perfect last year. You've got a very powerful processor as well as USB Type-C, a new squared off design, a beautiful display with the removal of the home button, in addition to Face ID, improved camera, and it just honestly seems to have everything going for it, including a huge suite of tablet apps that you're not going to find anywhere else. But like I've kind of implied in this video multiple times, I'd love to see Apple do a bit more when it comes to the integration, kind of a bridge between iOS and macOS next year. We all know this thing is so capable, and even at its price when it comes to the accessories costing a lot and adding up with the storage sizes of the iPad, it's still something that's easy for me to recommend for a lot of people. Whether you're artistic, using it for business, or more specifically for school, for multimedia, or as a main machine, this is going to be a great option, and I think for a lot of people, it's not going to disappoint. For me though, honestly, even though the 11-inch iPad is probably one that I'm going to keep around, I'm still going to find myself taking the 13-inch MacBook Pro for the most part when it comes to on-the-go use. I just kind of like the desktop file system as well as full suite of apps that I use on my main computer, so I'm not exactly ready to completely switch over to the iPad for mobile use yet. Otherwise, if you have any questions, drop them down below and make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.